this is just continued, just different parts of the book I was picking from that I seen were relevant. An animal requires a certain amount of food each day in order to maintain weight. This is one that Darren and I were talking quite a bit about. Nutrients above this maintenance level are used in order of priority for growth, milk production, for lactating animals, and fat deposition, um, conception as well. Cattle need to be bred and managed for a high relative intake. Uh, the genetic components are frame size, climate adaptation, and resistance to parasite and disease. So Jeremy or Mark, how about Mark? You want to add to that? Do you think it agree with that statement? It's in order of growth, milk production, and then conception.
I think that that's an accurate statement as far as in the order that those are listed. I also think that when you go, once a heifer's delivered her first calf, birthed her first calf, she is going to be continuing to absorb so much nutrients and needing to give so much nutrients to that calf, that the first thing that's going to drop off is being bred again. Her fertility drops off. That's the last thing on the chain of survival for any mammal on the face of the earth. So yes, giving the extra nutrients or the nutrient dense feed that they have available as far as the type of cattle we're grazing, mainly grass-based, grass-fed cattle, you get them into a good stand of pasture. They don't need a lot of extra nutrients. Now you take other breeds, other frame size of animals, it doesn't matter what breed it is. Larger framed animals, you're going to have to give them some energy to help them sometimes break down the less palatable forages, to build condition, to build fat, and just continue to maintain just that body. And once they meet those nutritional requirements to maintain their body, then they can give whatever else back to the calf. So if you've got larger framed animals, you have to put more. Okay. And some of those calories sometimes need to come from an outside source for energy or protein, sometimes both. Those cows are going to take care of a calf and they're going to go downhill. And when they go so far down, they drop off on milk production. That calf is going to start dropping off, and it's going to be one of your lower weaning weight animals, less profitable animals. And when it's a lower weaning weight of any type of breed of cow, it's going to take that much longer to feed that calf to get it up to body condition and to finish. Especially with what our goals are for finishing times for grass-based production. So in all, I agree with this, and that's my 2 cents on that slide.
Jeremy, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think Mark nailed it on the head. I think it's exactly right, and that's, again, that's why more moderate framed animals work better in grass production, because they have lower maintenance requirements, and more of what they eat can be passed on to that calf and help them continue to grow, or both. But yeah, I think Mark and Johan hit it on the head.
Now I've been kind of thinking about this since I made this slide. Where does this last sentence come into play? The climate and the adaptation. If an animal's not used to this environment, you brought them in from another state or a completely different environment, put them into this, how's this affecting body condition and fertility and milk production as well?
Stress, right? Every stress we put on an animal affects performance, and climatic adaptation is no different. So, an animal that's getting used to a new grass or a different environment or had to shed off to deal with where he's just moved to, um, is one of any number of stresses. And, when we're evaluating body condition of an animal, certainly it has to cross our mind, why is this animal in poorer body condition than the others? Is it genetic expression, or is it management, or is it climatic adaptation, size? These points that he makes, and when you have, as AJ says, moved an animal, it's hard to nail down how long it takes them to adjust to the new environment. Some animals do it almost seamlessly, and some animals take over a year.
Darren, we got you on now, bud.
I believe so. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, I had to look at my text messages and see that what name you was under. But I know we had some conversation around this, and I mean, you were super excited. We kind of rolled with it for a little while. You think we hit all the talking points you and I were discussing?
I think we have actually covered quite a few of them. We talked a little bit in the past about sophomore slump, and that was already mentioned, like these second, 2-year-old heifers, the requirements they need to grow and lactate and then reproduce. Mark nailed that. They sometimes don't do it all. In energy, I know one of the things we talked quite a bit about, AJ, was the things I've found a lot of times in young stock heifers and cows that aren't cycling properly. It usually is an energy requirement, and I think that's a little easier to manage with purchased feeds and feed supplements. So maybe this is a question I'd kick back to someone who's been raising cattle longer than me. What do you do to manage, Jeremy, maybe this would be a question for you. What do you do to manage energy in your heifers and cattle in regard to fertilization, cycling properly when you're struggling with stored feeds? And I know you don't have to store a lot of feed. Some of us in the more northern climates would feed a lot of stored feeds. So
yeah, well, and I mean, we're stockpiling, which is still stored feeds, right? And everything we're talking about is energy, right? And you're talking about feeding energy, right? But energy comes in different forms, right? And so, whether it's in the plant or in a small grain or you're buying it in a bag, fat deposits on an animal are stored energy, and they metabolize that stored fat to make up for the lack of energy in the diet. And so we're at a point right now, well, this is a strange winter because grass is growing in February and all this, but typically this time of year, we know our fescue's down to 8%. Protein, it's low in protein, it's low in energy, and the cattle aren't getting out of it what they were. So if the cattle aren't coming into it already in good shape, it's going to be a problem. And so how do we manage it? We try to have cattle in better condition going into it, and special attention certainly has to be paid to older animals, an animal raising twins, a younger animal that's still growing. And I would sacrifice the performance of the calf before I would sacrifice the performance of the cow. And what I mean by that is, if my cow herd's in good shape going into a rough month, dead of winter, dead of summer, if they're in good condition, great. But if I have some first calf heifers, I have a 20-year-old cow, I need to probably go ahead and either wean that calf or separate that cow from the herd and put her on some sort of stored feed, as you would say. Whether that's grain or a high dollar hay, I think you can achieve it through different forages, but it's all energy management. And the cow has to have the fat reserve to go to balance things out. And if she doesn't, then she's certainly just relying on the manager to provide it. And part of the problem is once you notice a cow's getting thin, there's already changes that have been made and it's harder to recover from. And when you see a group of cows that are thin, it takes a good year to get them back where they need to be. It's much tougher to rebuild condition than it is to maintain condition.